Let's start by stating the obvious. You are going to play God of War Ragnarök. You know this. You've been waiting 4 long years, watching all the trailers, reading all the fan theories, and now with the game finally here, your anticipation has ballooned to the point it's ready to burst.
You don't even need to watch this video, if I'm honest. You know, nothing I've got to say over the next 18 minutes is of any consequence, really, beyond the simple fact that God of War Ragnarök is every bit as breathtaking as you'd hoped, and then some.
And is that really news to you? What Santa Monica Studio achieved with God of War 2018 was so beyond even our loftiest expectations. Was there any doubt they'd stick the landing with the sequel? Because, for me, they've done it again. They've surpassed the hype. God of War Ragnarök will hit you like a Bifrost blast, a game ripped from some heavenly realm, booming into existence with the shock and splendour of a supernatural lightning storm. It will make you gasp and cry and laugh and cheer. The unexpected dips and twists of Ragnarok's narrative roller coaster made even more stomach-dropping by the fact you just won't see them coming. Strap yourself in for this ride, and you should do so knowing as little as possible about where it's headed.
And so, if you are going to stick with this video, here is my pledge. I swear to you, I shall talk about no story, show no boss battle, reveal no major cutscene. This video shall be only vibes, because, that's enough of that, because this is an experience to be savoured. This is a game that feels like it's been made for you. This is why God of War Ragnarök is the sequel fans deserve.
There are so many reasons to love God of War Ragnarök. Its startling environments, its thumping combat, its memorable characters, and Bear McCreary's powerful score.
Which for my money is even more epic and emotionally raw than before.
But if all of those elements form God of War Ragnarok's finely sculpted Adonis-like physique, the story is the game's heart, pumping fire and soul into each and every gameplay muscle. Fans who've been waiting and wondering since 2018 will be dazzled by the narrative fireworks with a shower of explosive revelations that will surprise and delight. But for me, what's most impressive about the story here is how it bleeds into everything else. Take the combat, for instance. Rarely are you simply chewing through disposable axe fodder. Instead, your enemies are often fighting for something as important to them as your quest is to you, bringing a charged emotional intensity to many encounters that goes rather nicely with the white-hot brutality of Kratos' improved and expanded moveset. Ripping a light elf in half in one of Ragnarok's many new and unflinching finishers feels all the more impactful after learning the story behind Alfheim's civil war, the desperate conflict between the aforementioned light elves and their dark elf kin,
who you may remember gleefully smashing to bits in the last game.
Basically, there's always something at stake during combat in Ragnarök, some reason to fight beyond the base rhythmic pleasure of the Leviathan axe's crunch, sweep and thunk. Ragnarok's combat feels so good, not just because it's been polished so much you can see your involuntarily grinning face in it, but also because of the emotional swell you'll feel inside your gut after surviving an out-of-the-blue mini-boss fight by a beard hair's breadth, or smashing the snot out of a creature who really flipping deserved it. There was this one particular fight about 15 hours in, the details of which I'm not going to go into and footage of which you are not currently watching because, you know, I promised, that left me breathless, exhilarated, and just utterly in awe. Not just because of its epic scale, its visual pomp, or the wonderfully inventive way Kratos finishes it off, but because of the story surrounding it, the intense build-up before, the heart-stopping thrill during, and the tear-jerking conclusion after.
When this particular fight was done, I sort of just sat there, dumbfounded by the intensity of what had just happened. You know, I was alone in my living room, heart thumping, and I just wanted to grab a friend and be like, oh my god! Have you seen that bit? Have you done that bit yet?
It was the kind of thing that had it happened in a cinema, the entire audience would have erupted in a roar of cheers. God of War Ragnarok is spectacle of the highest order, outrageous style and cinematic bombast, anchored by heart, warmth and character. Much of that is provided by the cast, with the core group of Kratos, Atreus, Mimir, Brock and Sindri never anything less than a joy to hang out with. But I have to single out Christopher Judge's performance as Kratos, because in God of War Ragnarok, he's rocketed this beloved and iconic character into a new emotional stratosphere. Of course, bringing Kratos to life is the work of an entire team of talented developers, all of whom have so noticeably poured every ounce of craft, skill and love into this game. But Judge's delivery is so powerful, you just...
Stop thinking like a father for a moment and start thinking like a general!
No!
Again, it would be helpful to talk about specific examples here, but I'm not going to, so instead I'll just say there are certain scenes where the words Kratos says, and sometimes the words he doesn't say, and the way in which he says or doesn't say those words, I'm getting shivers just remembering.
I will say, Kratos is more emotionally open in Ragnarok. He's come a long way. I mean, he's still intensely stoic and harder than a diamond with knuckle dusters, but what might have been a grunt and a laconic stare in God of War 2018 is now more likely to be a few well-chosen words of parental advice and a reassuring hand on the shoulder. Kratos has developed as a father in tandem with Atreus' blooming adolescence, deftly guiding his son's torrent of teenage angst and allowing it to flow rather than damming it up as you suspect he may have done before. Kratos gives Atreus room to figure himself out, to make his own decisions and, crucially, his own mistakes.
Atreus!
Wouldn't it help to understand what I'm becoming?
Atreus! Listen to me.
There's a confidence and a wisdom to Kratos in God of War Ragnarok. The molten cocktail of anger, guilt and grief bubbling through him in the previous game now cooled into a hardened acceptance of his past and a fresh determination to make the most of his and Atreus' present, to enjoy the simple act of spending time together as father and son.
Even if that time is spent cooperatively slapping Hellspawn into oblivion.
It's never going to make headlines, but one of my favourite additions to Ragnarok is that we've now got codex entries written from Kratos' perspective. What he says about other characters offers a level of insight into Kratos we've just never had before, and it's so compelling and at times heart-wrenching to read the inner thoughts of our hero, thoughts that made me interpret certain story beats in an entirely new way. The Kratos of God of War Ragnarok is a man yearning for peace, while at the same time unflinching in his refusal to compromise when it comes to the integrity and well-being of those he loves. That is the fire inside Kratos this time around, the fuel that ignites his blades, not revenge or rage, but resolve. Resolve that nothing, be it God, prophecy or world-ending apocalypse, will dictate how he and his son choose to live their lives. The way Christopher Judge both shoulders and conveys this layered emotional weight deserves special praise. His performance carries Kratos, and by extension us, through the turbulent events of the story. It's video game acting of rare nuance, and frankly, I just think he deserves all the accolades that will surely be coming his way.
We do not hide. We prepare for a fight for which we are not ready. We'll go.
With expanded emotional range comes expanded fighting range as well, apparently, and we need to talk more about God of War Ragnarok's combat.
If you're familiar with God of War 2018, you'll slip comfortably into this. The foundation of the combat in God of War Ragnarok is a satisfying continuation of what was so good first time round, namely a close over-the-shoulder camera giving you a perfect view of Kratos as he deploys a varied salvo of ripping combos into whatever is unfortunate enough to be in his way. You've got access to both the Leviathan Axe and the Blades of Chaos from pretty much the beginning this time, and shifting between the two is smooth and intuitive. As with God of War 2018, it's tough to pick a favourite, which I think is testament to how polished and finely balanced both weapons are. The Leviathan Axe is slower, but wallops enemies into a realm of hurt, and chucking then recalling it feels as glorious as ever. Alternatively, the Blades of Chaos zip and swish in a blur of ferocious orange, pulling enemies in, lighting them on fire, and then ripping them into sad chunks of regret. Where things have expanded, though, is in the depth of options you have with your combat build. Head into the skills menu and you'll notice Kratos can now upgrade individual moves simply by using them a certain amount of times, moving up through bronze and silver tiers until you reach gold, at which point you'll be able to apply one of 3 buffs.
The nature of these buffs depends on the move in question, so you could increase damage or increase stun or increase elemental power, or even do things like augment Kratos' defense or make him less likely to be interrupted when he's using the move.
This level of tactical tinkering is something I loved because it gives you the flexibility to create proper specialist builds. For instance, I'm a big fan of runic attacks, which are back, by the way, and slot into Kratos' weapons just as before. And so the armour I craft, the enchantments I equip, and the buffs I attach to gold tier skills are all geared towards souping up my runic stat. With a narrative centred so much around choice, about characters being granted the agency to live and fight as they choose, it's a satisfying parallel to be allowed such flexibility when it comes to the moment-to-moment gameplay. Plus, I just think it's cool that the game keeps track of how many times you've used each skill. It's a system that both encourages you to mix up your fighting style as you chase gold tier on everything, naturally, but that also, usefully, quickly powers up the moves you use most often. Ultimately though, what you really want to know is that sticking sharp bits of metal in monsters feels flippin' brilliant in God of War Ragnarok. The enemies you fight are varied and challenging, designed to ensure you make full use of Kratos' spectacular repertoire of skills. And then you've got the finishers, gloriously brutal moves Kratos performs with a tap of R3 once an enemy is sufficiently stunned. There are more of these this time, and pulling them off is a visceral thrill that had me giggling like an idiot throughout my playthrough.
Mechanically, combat is the core of God of War Ragnarok, and you can just feel that every move, every finisher, and every enemy that you use those moves and finishers on has been play-tested to Helheim and back.
This is video game combat of luxurious quality, the kind you can't truly appreciate until you grab a controller and feel its rhythmic flow purring away in your hands. And I've not even mentioned Atreus yet, who once again you can command to fire arrows with a tap or 3 of square, but who now takes the initiative a lot more, flinging himself around the battlefield with the fury of one trying to prove themselves. I've counted a few times where Atreus has finished off an enemy with no input from me whatsoever.
Which is definitely worth a proud look and a fatherly hand on the shoulder.
And so too is this, Atreus acrobatically scrambling and grappling up walls and across gaps, with his old man able to do the same, moves which both broaden your traversal options and also feed back into combat. Kratos can combine a swing or a fall from height with a simple press of R1 for an impactful and spectacular strike. Environments have been designed with this in mind. Fights take place in larger, more sprawling arenas than before, with verticality playing a major role.
And speaking of those environments,
I'm sure you've noticed throughout the video how vibrant, varied and imaginative they are, each realm given so much life and character that you won't be able to resist the siren call of the side quest, exploring optional areas and reveling in the loot and lore you'll discover within them. It'll be a regular conundrum as you play, torn as you'll be between finding out what happens next along the main path and devouring the additional story hidden away in secret places. Because each realm is as rich in narrative as it is in visual detail, many of the side quests embellishing the main story with added depth and context, engrossing mini-adventures that teach you more about the world and the characters within it.
again, without mentioning specifics, some of the most visually spectacular moments in the game are tucked away in side quests, so don't ignore them, drink it all in.
What struck me most about God of War Ragnarok's environments wasn't so much their obvious beauty, but the imagination that's gone into their conception. To use Svartalfheim as an example, when you first arrive here, you'll be hammered at first by how gorgeous everything is, and then immediately after by the fact this place is unlike any you've explored in a God of War game before. And this is a sensation you'll experience countless times as you journey through God of War Ragnarok. That swoop of childlike excitement at being presented with yet another breathtaking realm to explore.
I honestly don't know how the team at Santa Monica Studio has made all of this.
With God of War Ragnarok, we are being utterly spoiled. Spoiled with an incredible world, with searing combat, and with a story that will have you heaving with emotion.
But you know what? I think we deserve to be spoiled.
God of War Ragnarok is both the game we need and deserve. It's come along at a time when, things are difficult, uncertain, and kind of scary. But this is more than just a light in the darkness. Ragnarok is a roaring inferno of pure adventure into which you can pour yourself. And while you're playing it, just forget about everything else. Let Kratos and the gang be your comfort blanket, your shield. This is what you've been looking forward to for 4 years after all. So take your time. Savour every last moment. Video games like this don't come around very often. The wait for God of War Ragnarok is almost over, and you deserve it. Also, thanks very much for watching. If you have made it this far, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and subscribe and click the notification bell if you haven't yet done so, because we've got loads more God of War Ragnarok content coming up over the next couple of weeks. Thanks for watching, and catch you again soon.